I rise to make a contribution on the Right to Farm Bill 2019. And from the outset, can I acknowledge the very thoughtful and considered contributions from my Labor colleagues, beginning with the Honourable Mick Veitch, who has led a careful analysis of this bill and the reasons why we'll be opposing it tonight. And I particularly want to touch on some of the issues that my colleague, the Honourable Rose Jackson, just raised in a very sophisticated and elegant way. And she talked about how this is a difficult issue. This is an issue that requires a nuanced and sophisticated approach. And the Honourable Mick Veitch outlined clearly the many failures in this bill. Now, I acknowledge that there are a number of amendments on the table that will seek to improve this bill, and we will reserve our position on that until we see what improvements have been made. But I think before speaking about those, it's important to look at what is being presented to the House tonight. And it is a poorly drafted bill. It is, as the Honourable Rose Jackson said, a ham-fisted approach. It is not a nuanced and sophisticated way through these incredibly difficult issues. And I draw to the attention of the House, Mr President, the report of which I was a member of the inquiry, the select inquiry into landowner protection from unauthorised filming or surveillance in the previous parliament, chaired by the Honourable Robert Borsak, with myself, Mick Veitch, many other members, including the Honourable Mark Pearson. And we, over a series of weeks and months of careful deliberation, came up with 6 recommendations. Now, in the same way that the government has failed to even conduct its own review of the Enclosed Lands Act as it's supposed to, and as the Upper House Committee rightfully pointed out, this government clearly ignored all of those very careful and specific recommendations as well. And I think that would definitely have improved the bill and the discussion that we were having tonight, because it is no doubt that anybody who had a look at the inquiry report, the Upper House report into this bill, many of the opponents are actually concerned about whether they are unintended or not, who knows, but the consequences of this bill in practice. And Mr President, in a short contribution tonight, I want to just read some of those things into the record tonight. I want to speak specifically Unions New South Wales and quote from their submission to the inquiry, which said the bill goes beyond its stated intention of regulating protest actions on farms, and the bill restricts and criminalises the right to protest on all enclosed lands. So what does that mean, Mr President? Well, under this bill, and I quote again, criminal sanctions could apply to a union picket that occurs on enclosed lands. 2 prominent examples are Patrick's waterfront dispute in 1998 and the Hutchison dispute in 2015, a protest on the grounds of a university, a sit-in at a shopping centre, union meetings that take place in a car park or grounds of the business, and a union official visiting a workplace to talk to members. I go on, I quote from the ETU's contribution. They acknowledge some of the important aspects of the proposed legislation and agrees in principle with the desire to protect farmers, landowners and the agricultural sector from unlawful nuisance disruption. But they are of the strong belief that the proposed Right to Farm Bill goes beyond regulating the actions on private farms and beyond the scope outlined in the Minister's second reading speech. They give other examples: a peaceful protest that takes place inside a TAFE, health and safety representatives carrying out their duties, a union organiser talking to workers in their workplace. Let me say that again, Mr President. A union organiser talking to workers in their workplace, or a protest by farmers against environmental impacts on their own lands, such as CSG exploration. Now, I was part of the Labor opposition that put up quite a fight against the original Enclosed Lands Bill that came before this place. And specifically the examples that we consistently raised and that were raised with us were the ability of farmers to protest on their own properties. And again, we are faced with that issue tonight. We are faced with groups like the Knitting Nanas who seek to improve the communities in which they live and under this bill their conduct could be considered criminal. Mr. President, I put to you that that is a serious challenge to the right of individuals to protest. I also want to acknowledge the work of the AWU and the Meat Workers Union, who also put in submissions outlining the significant concerns that they have under this bill. Mr. President, others have made this point. Our farmers are going through an incredibly difficult period at the moment. They are facing drought, they are facing incredibly difficult circumstances. But there are real issues that need to be addressed. Climate change, the lack of transparency over and their inability to negotiate over the supply chain. The loss of land from urbanisation. These are real issues that are not dealt with in this bill tonight. And Mr. President, I have a deep sympathy to the farmers and the genuine fear and distress who have people who are trespassing on that land. But as the Honourable Matthew Mason Cox outlined in his contribution, there are provisions already around trespass. There are existing laws in place that address this issue. Mr. President, this is not a carefully constructed and nuanced bill to deal with difficult issues or the real issues that farmers in New South Wales are facing. And for that reason, we will be opposing it and seeking to amend it.